For more content and training, go to on telling personal story, go to ramiro.me/show. Story Legacy at ramiro.me, a show for people who want to tell their story, make an impact, and leave a legacy. Personal stories from people just like you who have gone through tough shit and came out with a story to tell. I am Ramiro, creator of Story Legacy, your story guide, and today on the show we have Alex Manzi.
The crowd go wild.
Exactly. Hey, Alex, welcome on the show. Great to have you on here.
Thank you for having me, man. I feel like I'm gonna have to say your name as Ramiro now. I can't say it in a normal way. I have to put the emphasis on it.
Okay. Oh, that's so funny. People ask me that all the time, and I tell them it depends on which language you speak. Chinese people go la milo, so
Yeah.
yeah, bro. All right, so I like to dive in right away, and the question I like to open up with is, what has been the one of the biggest challenges you've gone through?
Don't start with an easy question then. um, oh man, so many. I think the main one for me is this, an obvious one. It is going through years of depression and coming through that and out the other side. And it's no mean feat. It's no easy. It's no easy task. But yeah, man, that's been one of the toughest things I've ever been through, and also one of the proudest things I've ever been through at the same time.
Cool. I definitely relate with that. So I'm curious. So when you say years of depression, right? For me, I know it has these periods, like some months, some weeks, and then it goes like that, right? So I'm curious, when did it first start for you, and do you know what triggered it?
Uh, I don't know, and no is the short answers. It just kind of, I don't know. I guess like sometime in my teen years, probably after school. So like I left school when I was 18. I somewhere around there, maybe before. Still not even sure. I just I stopped becoming myself, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I always remember myself being like really young and being like, fun loving, just generally happy and cheerful, and just didn't care too much about what other people thought, in a good way, not necessarily in a bad way. And somewhere along the line that changed, and I mean, just about, I reckon, pin it back to around that time, like 17, 18 maybe. And yeah, I don't know what started it. I don't know what. It's just one of those things that crept up on me in my life, and it just sort of, one day I just realized that this is what's been going on all these years. Because up until then, it just almost like became normal. It felt normal. It felt like that was just who I was, and that's how my life was. And I'd just have this gray cloud over my head all the time, and I kind of just would go through the days like that, and that was kind of it. It was just like, it didn't really feel like there was a thing that started it, or it just kind of crept up on me. And it wasn't for many years that I realized that that is what I'd been going through for all of those years. So although I say that going through depression was the hardest thing that I did, I didn't necessarily know I was going through it at the time, if that makes sense. It was until I kind of realized it that I was like, oh, damn. And then it was kind of, I guess, like the recognition period of, like, I had like a year and a half after I'd realized what I'd been going through, that was incredibly tough for me. And that was the hardest part, was like trying to then figure out like what the F was going on, and how do I get like beyond this and past it, and all of that stuff there.
So I'm curious. So it was like 1.5 years of when you just figuring it out and learning how to get out of it. And how many years did you go through it unnoticed?
So again, I lose track of the timings, but I kind of think so, from around 17, 18 up until I was about 26. So it's a good like 8 years.
Hmm.
that I was living my life like that. And then basically what happened was I was with a girlfriend at the time, and she had her own like stuff going on like in her personal life, and we just like one day we were having this kind of like back and forth argument, and basically she just turned around to me at one point. She was like, "Why aren't you saying anything?" And I was kind of like thinking, like, we're talking about, we've just been arguing for like half an hour or something. Like, I must have been saying something. And I realized that like the whole time I was just sat there we were in her bedroom. I was sat there on the edge of her bed, and I wasn't actually saying anything. I was just sat in silence, but like I was replying in my head to what she was saying. And then she was obviously responding with something else. And then I was replying with something, but I wasn't actually saying it out loud. So I literally wasn't saying anything, but to me, I was. And that moment kind of woke me up to like realizing how much of my life I'd kind of been in this shell, is the only way I can put it, like in a protective shell for myself, and not being myself truly. And I basically just like ended up flopping onto the bed and bursting into tears, and just admitted for the first time out loud and even to myself that I was going through something. And the only words I could say at that moment were, I just don't feel like me. I just don't feel like me. And that was the moment where I kind of realized what was going on. And then I had like after kind of like 8 to 9 years of going through it, and then I had like a period of like a year and a half where I had to figure out like what the fuck, like, sorry, can I swear?
Yeah,
What the
you can
fuck?
swear. It's okay.
Yeah, cool. What the fuck was going down? And that year and a half was partly exciting but really scary at the same time. And like I said, I'm just really thankful for that time in my life, because I learned a lot about myself, and I rediscovered a lot about myself as well.
Beautiful. Now, in that period of reflecting and coming out of it, that 1.5 years, what you mentioned, it was one of the scariest. What specifically was so scary about it? And what was one of the biggest insights, or a few of the insights you've really had and lessons you've learned during that period?
Mm. So I get the scary part was just the unknown. Like, how do I get through this? What do I do? Like, how have I got to this point? Who am I? Like, I almost felt like it's just like being reborn into the world, like completely naked of everything. And I'm sort of just stood there like, what? Like, what's going on right now? It was like almost like a whole new, it's like a waking up moment, really. And it was like a whole new experience for me in terms of like being like, I don't know, like what to do, like how do I get help? How do I support? How do I overcome this? What, like, there were so many unknowns. But then on the flip side, that was also quite exciting after a while, because it was like, oh, okay, I can actually like create the life that I want through this. And I can't remember the second part of your question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the one was, what was the scariest thing? You said the unknown
Yeah.
primarily, and then asking those questions like, who am I, coming undone, rebirth. And the other question is, what have been some of the
Uh,
insights that you've learned from that?
yeah, I guess for me, like the main insights would be that I realized that, having been depressed, and I've suffered from anxiety as well, like for so many years. Like, that doesn't have to mean shit about me. That doesn't have to define me. Like, it doesn't actually have to mean anything. It's completely neutral, and it's the meaning that I place on it, and the lens that I see it through, that creates the experience I have. So like, if I'm looking at that, so like now I can be really thankful that I did suffer for that long with depression, because now it means that I have the opportunity to keep myself active and make sure I'm maintaining like good practice with mental health, and I'm like always kind of developing myself and doing my own work and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm really thankful for that, because that's created a new opportunity for me to like create something moving forward. So I think that was the real insight, really, was like understanding that, okay, cool, like it's happened. Like, it doesn't mean I have to be depressed for the rest of my life. It doesn't mean that I'm defined as a depressed person. It was a season of my life that has come and it's gone. But what are the opportunities off of the back of it that I can now go on to create for myself? And that really changed like a lot of my approach, just being okay with the fact that I had been depressed for so long.
Beautiful. Now, all right.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I love about, going through tough shit, is like something like depression, is that when you really come out at the other end, you're so grateful for that challenge, for that those dark days, because of how you grow and develop beyond that. And I love what you said about it. Even it was a season of your life, and it does not have to define you. And one of the key questions you asked during that period when you realize that is, who am I? So I'm
Mhm.
curious. So that question, there's so many different ways to answer it, and it really goes deep. So I'm curious for you, like how do you answer that question today? How have you answered that question, and how do you answer it today, right now?
So I think I'll start with like how I've previously answered it. I think a lot of what we go to as people when someone asks us that question is the identity we have. So I do this as a job. I am from London. I'm this old. I'm, whatever. We attach a lot of labels to it. I'm straight. I'm gay. I'm, whatever. That's the thing, that's our go to. But what I've started to realize is that's just really surface level. That stuff isn't really truly who we are. Like, who we really are actually lies beyond that stuff. So if you strip back, like, all of those labels, like being a brother, someone's son, a work buddy, a partner, for me, a coach, a this, or that, and the other. Like, if you strip all of that stuff back, what's left? That's who you really are, right? And for me, that is kindness, compassion, love, abundance, clarity, peace. That's what's left behind when I take away those labels. And I've started to realize, like, that's who we all are. That's not me specifically, that's who we all are. But unless you're able to see beyond the labels, which is hard, don't get me wrong, it's not an easy thing. Like, you can understand it intellectually. Like, people probably listening now, like, okay, cool, like, I understand that, but I can't really see it for myself. It's until you can really see it for yourself that you can really understand how true it is. And, having been very fortunate, like I said, to have gone through some tough stuff, I've had to face up to those questions, but also continuing my own personal development, like, I'm able to really see that as the truth. And that is far more powerful than being a brother, a son, a worker, a this or that, a car owner, a house owner, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's like, they're just labels, don't mean anything.
I love that. All right, that's what. Yeah, when you find the identity beyond those labels and those surface level physical relationships or roles, responsibilities. I love that. And for you, it's like kindness, compassion, love, and I love because when you get to that level, that core is when, like you said, is that we see that in each and every one of us, and the labels are just like the physical form of it, but at the core, we're kindness, we're love, we're compassion. Ooh, I love that. All right, cool, thank you. So I'm curious. So that's like what for me. That's one big insight that came out of that period of depression and growing in that 1.5 years. So what other lessons have you learned because of that experience?
I guess there's a few things. I think the thing that comes to me right now is that, on the surface, on the outside to the external world, I probably looked like I was all right during that time. Even though, to me, even me, I probably thought I was all right during that time. Like I said, I just thought it was a normal experience of, that's just how I was, kind of thing. So I guess the learning is that you never really know what someone's going through
Mm,
behind what they're allowing you to see.
mm,
And that's been really impactful, because you start to, again, you that brings you just back to compassion, right? If you understand that someone, maybe, even if someone's just rude to you in a shop, like the shop worker is rude to you for whatever reason, they might just be going through some really tough stuff. Like, they might have a parent in hospital, or, like, so their thinking's all sped up and messed up, so, like, they've been rude to you. It's not that they're a rude person necessarily. It's just, that's just the feeling that they're in at the moment. So, like, it then brings you into a place of compassion. Like, okay, so if someone is rude to you, you can be like, oh, I wonder why that was. I'm sure they're not really a rude person, and maybe they've got something going on. That's compassion, right? So that's been a really big learning, is like understanding that you never really know what someone's going through, um, like, deep down inside, unless they show you. And the other thing, I guess, is just that nothing's really permanent in life. Like, again, it goes back to the season idea, right? And, I talk about nature a lot as a teacher, because I think it's a great teacher for all of us, because we're as much nature as nature is itself. And like everything's kind of impermanent. There is no permanent in life. Like literally, there is nothing permanent in life, other than change. So like, and that's been a real big bit. That was been a real big learning for me, is like just like leaning into this idea, like, okay, well, if nothing's permanent in life, then why do I get so annoyed about being stressed with work, or like this thing happening or that thing happening, or like my team losing a game, or like it's just like I'm in 5 years, and maybe sometimes in 5 minutes or 5 weeks, I'm not really going to be bothered about that thing. So just I try now to not um allow myself to get caught up in little things like that. I see them for what they are, and I'm like, okay, cool, like I feel annoyed right now. It doesn't mean I have to stay annoyed for like the foreseeable future about it. I can actually like just get over it. Like, and what I'm noticing at the minute is that's becoming that time frame between when something happens and the way in which I respond. The time frame is getting shorter and shorter and shorter over time, which is, you know, again showing me that a lot of the work and stuff that I'm doing myself is really working.
Beautiful. All right. Now, two things on what you mentioned. You mentioned one, that on the outside you may not be able to see what someone's going through, and thus when people react nasty and are very rude, that we have that level of compassion. So I see like the first step in that is actually the don't take it personal, right? And then going to that compassion, like, you don't know what shit they're going through at the moment, why they react and respond that way, right? So
Hmm.
that's one thing. I do have a question on that. Well, let's focus on that right now.
Hmm.
For you, right? If you look back at that time, and things that will paint a picture for us, because you say for you it was normal, and now you realize, ooh, that was not normal. That was actually a state of depression. But going through life and in your interactions and relationships, people could not see it from the outside. You could not even see it in that situation. So, what was the thing that looks so normal, like specific the details, paint the picture? What was so normal for you, and how do you look at it now that you realize that what was really going on and what made it so that you were in that state of depression? You already mentioned that you weren't really being yourself. And I love how you said that example of how you were applying in your head, thinking you were applying
Hmm.
outside. So, what are those things? What did your life look like? What did you look like? And how did you perceive that to be normal? And how was it not normal?
I think the best way to look at it is like on paper. Like if you look at, someone in their early 20s and the things that they're doing with their life, I had a lot of those boxes ticked. I had like a really good job. I had a lovely girlfriend, loving family, had my own car, on my way to like buying my own place, was going on like nice holidays, was going out and, socializing or partying and all that. So on paper, you just like, well, it's just a normal guy, like normal 20 something year old guy, like he's just living his life, right? But it was my experience of those things, as not maybe not necessarily individually, but as a whole, that was just a bit numb and a bit grey. Like it didn't really, okay, yeah, I enjoyed a holiday and yeah, I enjoyed a night out, but then when I wasn't enjoying a night out and I wasn't on holiday, I was just left with this like dull, like grey numbness. And that was the overhanging experience for everything. And I realized like, whoa, hold on. So I've got this good job, I've got this wicked girlfriend, I'm having all these wicked experiences, but they're not making me happy. So then what makes me happy? Like why we're told that like if you have all of these things and you have a great, successful, happy life, but I didn't. So I was like, well, that doesn't seem right. And then that was when I, maybe started to, on some level, question it myself. And then after that, I had that moment I explained with my ex-girlfriend. And then that sort of year and a half window that I was talking about was me really like analyzing that stuff and be like, okay, well, if going on a nice holiday, if I feel happy when I'm there, but then I'm not happy when I'm not there, is it the holiday that makes me happy? Or is it my thinking when I'm in the holiday that makes me happy? Because I've also been on holidays where I haven't been happy. So it's like I started to like really like piece like a jigsaw together, or like maybe unpiece it. I don't know which way around it would be, like, but one of the two. I started to do something with it, and yeah, I just got to this point of realizing, like, at that time, what was happening was on paper, on the outside, to my friends, my family, my girlfriend, like, I looked like everything was okay and everything was together, but on the inside, the overall experience I was having was just this numb dullness, like a, you see like the cartoons, it had like a grey cloud over your head. It just felt like that all the time, with these moments of like happiness, and then other moments of like extreme, like deep, dark sadness, and horrible thoughts and stuff like that. And it was just like, surely we don't just go from like one extreme to the other. Like, it seems like, this seems like the thing that we should do. Like, we should be sad, like have extreme sadness, but then also extreme happiness. But then that doesn't seem like a very good balance to me. It doesn't seem like that's a very nice way to experience life, to just continue going up and down and up and down and up and down. So I just thought, like, yeah, this isn't the one. And then, yeah, like I said, internally, I just realized, like, yeah, at some point, this isn't the way that I want to be experiencing life. There's got to be something more to it. And that's when I started to question and have that sort of, yeah, breakthrough, or whatever you want to call it.
Thank you for that insight, because for me that depression was very different. It was when I felt shit and that gray cloud, I knew it, and I would sleep for weeks, months, sometimes just mostly sleep, not shower, not eat properly. And so I could see it, people outside could see it as well. And so then it becomes very obvious, and then you can really address it and go like, what's going on? But you mentioned, and in your experience, you mentioned you were ticking all the boxes, following the rules, what society labels as success, good job, the house, the car, etc., good income, the relationships. And but you said on the inside it felt like you had that gray cloud above your head walking around, and that no, but not it's not as apparent. So that's why it was like very subtle, and you didn't even realize that, right? So another way I would describe it is that you're not present in the moment and
Mm-hmm.
not fully expressing yourself. So you have a sign behind you. It says live in the moment. And from what you just shared, that makes complete sense of that shift from being so absent and being so numb, like you said, and then shifting that to live in the moment. Oh, and
Mm-hmm.
now, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah,
Live
yeah.
in the moment.
And it's even like beyond that, man. It's like, it's about being aware in the moment as well. Like, I lived a lot of my life like not being aware of like how I was actually feeling, whereas now, more often than not all the time, still areas to work on. More often than not, I'm able to catch myself and be aware of how it is that I'm feeling. And then, like I said, the amount of time that I spend being caught up in that feeling gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And that's been really like hugely impactful, man, because like you said, like, I have a friend of mine who had a very similar experience with depression to what you had, by the sounds of it. He'd spend weeks, months at a time, like not getting out of bed, not showering, like not even brushing his teeth or whatever. And my experience was entirely different, because I was still functioning normally, normally, and but on the inside I wasn't. And yeah, it was just, and at that time as well, like for me, that was like 26, so call it like nearly 8 years ago. It was a very different time as well. Like, now you can go into a bookshop, or like open a podcast app, and like every celebrity and every person's got a book or a podcast about mental health, and everyone's talking about it. Like, then it was still a bit, like, it was still like, it was, people were starting to talk about it, but it was still not really a done thing. So it was really difficult for me to understand like what was going on. Whereas now I feel like there's so many resources and things that people can listen to and check out and go to, in terms of not just support, but also to help understand where they're at. Whereas, like, for me, I didn't really have that. I didn't really know what to do. Whereas, like, now, if someone said to me, like, oh, I'm feeling a bit this, that, or the other, like, firstly, I'd talk to them, but I could also give them a load of resources to, like, go listen to this, go check that out, go and watch this, go and read that. Like, that would definitely help them. Whereas, like, I didn't really have that in place for myself, because no one around me had that in place. And there wasn't really a wider conversation as much as there is today, fortunately, um, around topics like mental health and depression and anxiety and stuff like that. So I was kind of like trying to figure it all out, like myself.
Yeah. So okay, cool. So that there's you mentioned a key thing. Besides just living in the moment, a key aspect is like awareness, right? Being aware of in the moment of our feelings. That's a key aspect. Also, looking back into while you were going through life unaware of what was going on, and even what you mentioned on a broader level nowadays, because there is a more general awareness. There's also more resources and support to to discover, to learn, to grow, and to deal with those type of things. And yeah, beautiful awareness. That's a key distinction. Awareness. Thank you. I love
Mm.
that. Now, you mentioned something else. You had mentioned that one, you were describing how you were not living it, and that well, you were numb, and people couldn't really see that on the outside. You had mentioned something else. Well, do you remember what the second thing was you mentioned in? Well, anyway, if I come back, if it comes back, it'll come back. So I'm curious, what has been the one of the most recent things you've learned and the most recent breakthroughs you've had? And
Um,
yeah, so that doesn't have to be like big, small, but just yeah, so one big or small one.
I guess a lot, man. Like, you know, I'm very fortunate that the work I do as a coach and through my podcast is that I'm always learning, and I'm always taking on learnings via other people or via myself. And I think one of the things that I've been really big on at the minute is the idea of just showing up empty. And what that looks like is like when you're having a conversation, or when you're turning up to work, or when you're doing anything, like, don't bring any necessary agenda or preconceived ideas or concepts to the table. Just be really open to receive, and by doing that, you're able to get way more out of whatever it is that you're doing, because you're giving more. If you turn up somewhere with a cup that's full, you can't put anything else in that cup. Like, you can't, you have nothing to give in terms of space to in that cup, so you can't receive, right? Whereas if you turn up with an empty cup, you have plenty of space to give in order to receive. And that's one thing that I'm really noticing is like, the more empty it is that I can show up, particularly with like coaching clients, and particularly with like in my own relationships, like, the more empty that I can show up, the more I'm actually getting from those experiences and those relationships. And that's incredibly powerful, because we don't do it. Like, we bring so much to the table in terms of like baggage and like stories about ourselves and judgments of the other people, and like concepts and constructs of society and bleh. Like, it's just, do you know what I mean? It's like, why? We don't need to. We can just show up empty whenever we want. Like, when a when a when a dog sees you in the morning, they're really happy, and they do that every morning. Like, every morning, they're completely empty. Like, in that moment, they're just as excited to see you today as they were yesterday, as they were the day before, as they were the day before, as were the day before. There's no difference to them, because they're just empty. They don't think like, I saw you yesterday. It's not that big a deal. Like, they're extremely happy to see you. Like, that's sick. And I think as humans, we've got a uh, we've kind of become removed from that in a way, because we our cups are so full with stuff, and I don't think that's very useful for us. It seems like it's useful, right? It seems at the time we're like, hey, that seems like a good idea, but actually it's not useful at all.
I love that. So the work you do is you're a coach, so you work with clients, you coach them, and you have your own podcast. So that's
Mhm.
one of your ways of creation and creative outlet and expression. And the one of them in those things, for example, one of the biggest things is showing up empty, so that you're very open to be in, to live in the moment and to receive whatever comes in that moment, right? Showing up empty. Ooh, I love that metaphor and that example you gave of a dog. Everybody is
Yeah.
showing empty and excited.
Yeah, it's that's how I try to maybe not be like really excited when I see a coaching client, but like, I just show up empty. Like, I don't bring anything. I don't bring my own ideas or notions to the table. I'll more often than not, I'll start a conversation with a client with, what do you want to get from this conversation today, or what would be helpful for you, and let's go from there. And if there's something that I can share that's similar, or like we'll talk around some stuff, like I don't want to bring anything to the table. I want them to get the benefit. So the more empty I am, the more I can give in terms of presence and listening, the more I'm able to receive from them, the more they're able to receive back from me.
I love that. Yeah, cool, cool. I love what you just said about so you use the dog as a metaphor, right? The dog is always happy. So that's a metaphor of how the dog shows up empty. But that doesn't mean literally that you have to be happy each time you see a coaching. You don't have to become the dog. Just take the lesson of how the dog showing up empty, but don't become the dog who's always
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it would be great to be a dog because they have a great life. Like, let's be honest. But yeah, don't become the dog. Just take on the idea of just being empty. Like using the idea that, like, yeah, they're as happy to see someone every day as they were the day before and the day before and the day before, but because they're not like just like filled up with like, yeah, whatever, I saw you yesterday. They're just like, man, I'm empty. Like, this is cool. I'm really happy right now because you've come to see me. Like, that's just how I feel. Like when you're having conversations with friends and family and partners and work colleagues and whatever, like the more empty you are, the more of a relationship that you end up actually building, because you're actually really listening to someone and hearing someone rather than like bringing an agenda or some sort of idea or whatever, like judgments or whatever to the table.
And all those labels, right? Of
Yeah, and the
yeah,
labels. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, beautiful. I actually realized you explain you giving that metaphor of when you're meet a client that you're so super happy to see them that you don't have to do that. And sometimes when I call some friends, some close friends, some brothers, I pick up when they pick up, I say, "Brava!" Then that's how I greet them. And one of my friends, he always struggles. He goes, "Oh, hey, bro, what's up?" So he always laughs, and that's his response. And now I have some other brothers, other friends. When I say, "Bro," I'm like, here you go, being silly again.
Yeah.
That's not always received in that same energy. So I'm curious, showing up empty. Now, this is kind of a question that I'm asking, probably asked at the beginning of a call, but what would you like to get out of this conversation today?
Great question. Don't know, man. I think for me, the thing I wanna bring to conversations like this is just to just be as honest as I can with whatever you ask me. Like, I'm never gonna hold anything back. I'm never gonna try and make myself sound amazing for the sake of trying to sound amazing. I'll just talk about my experience, and that's what I want to give to the conversation. And then in terms of what I want to get from it is like we get to spend some time together, which is sick, get to know each other a bit better. And anyone who's listening, like if there's anything that they feel resonates with them in this conversation, then like feel free to just hit me up and let me know what that is. Like, is there a learning you made? Is there something that you didn't agree with? Like, that's it. Like, I don't necessarily even want to get a lot out of stuff, if that makes sense. That's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother way of showing up empty, because by wanting to get something out of time you spend with someone, or going on holiday, or going to eat with someone, or whatever, by wanting to get something out of it, you're already not showing up empty, because you've already got an idea of what you want to get from that. Do you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
like, and that's why for me, like from a coaching perspective, it's slightly different, because as much as I encourage my clients to show up empty, like they're still paying me to coach them and get to them. There is something that would be helpful for them to get from the conversation. It's not necessarily a want, but it's like what would be helpful for you. um so yeah, man, I think that's it. Like, I'm not there's not really a want or a need. Just to catch the vibe, ride the wave.
I love that. Now, if someone were want to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach you?
Instagram's always the best way, at I am Alex Manzi. I'm always on there, replying to messages, replying to DMs. I'm on other platforms like Twitter and TikTok with the same handle, but Instagram's kind of where I hang out the most. So yeah, just hit me up on there. Like I said, if there's anything that resonated with you in this conversation, if there's any questions, if there's anything you didn't like, or think I'm a bit of a prick, then just hit me up and let me know. That'd be great to connect either way. Like I'm here to hear constructive criticism as well as like answer questions or hear what learnings you might have made from this conversation.
Yeah, cool. Because you don't take that shit personal, and you have the compassion for when someone calls you a prick.
Yeah, I'd love to know why. Like, why? What was it that? Because then, if it's something that I can, maybe avoid doing in the future, that's good. That's cool. Like, I can just take that on board.
Cool, beautiful. So on the gram, I am Alex Manzi, right?
Yes.
And that's how we connected because I had a guest scheduled, Jason Goldberg, and then I was just checking out on the podcast he was going on, and then you had him on your show to interview him, and I watched that interview, I loved it, and then I said, hey, I want Alex on the show, so I reached out to you on the gram, and that's how we initially got connected, and now we're here having a live conversation. I love that, and I love the answer which you gave is all right. Today, right? This conversation. What would you like to get out of it? So how are you showing up empty? And one of the things what I heard you say is basically you by showing up empty, you come and you just want to fully express yourself as honestly as and transparently as possible
Mm,
and just express and show who you are, and that comes back into that period of life where when you had a season of depression and you were not yourself. And
yeah.
so it's even in this moment, what I heard you say is to be as much of yourself as possible and to be as transparent as possible in who you are, to be in congruent, to be in alignment. Ooh, I love that, bro. I love that. Thank you.
Mate, you said it better than me, so thank you.
I do my best to always paraphrase it in my own words to see
Yeah,
if I
nice.
got the message correct. Because
Yeah,
sometimes I don't, and then people go, "Well, actually, no. There's a little bit more nuance to that."
yeah. And you know what's great about it as well is like it. I find that it may even help someone who's listening or watching to like understand it further for themselves because they're not just hearing it from what I'm saying, they're hearing someone else take on an understanding with it and then like um I don't know what the word I'm trying to use is regurgitate it in their own way. And
Yeah.
that's I think that's sick because it's just like it's another way to reaffirm the learning that you've taken for the other person who's listening to potentially take.
Mm, mm. That what you just said is so important because a lot of people, I see a lot of people who have that desire to inspire, right? To share a message what they are learning, and yet they often feel stopped by because they see all these other people already saying what they want to say, and like, why do
Mm.
I have to do it? Someone else is already doing it. And what you said is so important because your voice and your flavor and your unique personality, it matters because of what you said. It's that slightly different angle that makes it so that the message gets received and really lands for someone else. So thank you for
Mm.
that insight.
Yeah, do you know what? That actually reminds me a conversation that I had with my coach last week. So basically, what happened was is I this is going to get complicated. So I had a I had a coaching conversation with my coach's coach, right?
Okay.
And my
Okay.
coach was listening in on the conversation, right? And we were using it as like a thing for both of us to learn. And he took notes, and then we took away some stuff that we want to talk about. But anyway, that aside, one of the things that I was talking to his coach about was time management. And he was really helpful, and I had some like insights and learnings, and I was like taking notes in my coaching journal. And then like a couple weeks later, I had a conversation with a potential client about time management. And I was basically taking on board the stuff that I learned in that conversation, but then reusing some of the stuff I learned as examples to help this potential client understand my experience with time management and the things that I learned. And then they're taking their own learnings based on my version of it and making their own version of it. And I think that's kind of what you're saying, right? It's like, yeah, okay, it's good to have influence and inspiration from other people, but the most important thing is to like really understand what is the learning that you're taking individually, and then applying that learning, because it's great to have information, but I'd rather have less information and more experience of applying that information to things, rather than just like accumulating information for the sake of accumulating information. So like an example being, like this year, one of the things that I wanted to do, and I'm kind of still doing it, but for in a different way, was I realized I just had like this stack of books like in my room, and I was just like smashing through reading these books, like however many over the last sort of 5-6 years. And I couldn't tell you in most of them what on earth I'd learned from most of those books. So I was just like, I just wanted to get on to the next one. It was almost like a, like a badge of honor. Like, oh yeah, I've read that one. Oh yeah, I've read that one. Yeah, I've read that one. So this year I was like, okay, well, for every new book that I read, I want to reread a book that really resonated with me first time round. Because there's one of my mentors, Steve Chandler, who's an amazing coach, you might be aware of through Jason Goldberg. He always says, once for information, twice for transformation. So like the first time you read something or listen to something or watch something, you take on the information from it. But the second time that you go and watch or listen or read that thing, you are creating a transformation in yourself, because now you're understanding it with the information that you got from it last time, and you're taking more learnings from that, which you can now apply. So you're creating transformation. So I use that idea when it came to my own readings. Like, okay, I want to reread books that really impacted me first time around and take on the information a second time, but in a very different way. And again, it goes down to like just, taking on learnings and applying them. Like, and I had a conversation with a client the other day, and I was like, he was very similar to me. He was just like smashing through books. He's a much quicker reader than me. He would like read a book in like a week. I was like, you're crazy, dude. And I said to him, like, instead of like smashing through books, would you be open to the possibility of limiting the number of books you read for the rest of the year, even if it means you have to read those certain books 2 or 3 times? And he was like, totally. And we basically ended up deciding that the best thing for him was just to read 3 books between now and the end of the year. And that's it, just 3 books. And we came up together, we agreed together what those 3 books would be. And he was like, yeah, cool, let's do it. And he really wanted to like take the learnings from these 3 books in a really deep way, rather than going, oh, I've read that one, I'm going to go pick the next book off my shelf. I know I've read that one, go pick the next book. I've read that one, let me go pick the next. Like, he's actually now taking the learnings from the books that he's reading and understanding how to apply them in his own life. And that's far more powerful than just accumulating information.
I love that you're focused on more, well, you'd rather have less information and more application and
Yes.
integration. I love that. For me, I have about 40, 50 books, and that this is already slimmed down. I used to have a lot more, but I said, all right, I curated them. These are, I'm not going to read. And now these 40, 50 books, I've read about 10, so let's say 10 of them. And there are some books on the list that in my collection, I know, all right, I'm going to read it sometime, but not right now. So I decided to like get rid of them, give them away. So when I'm ready, I'll just buy it again and read it then. So I'm curious for you, what have been the books that has impacted you the most, and really in the sense of the application and the integration of those concepts?
Love that. Okay, so this is actually a really interesting question, right? Because if you just asked me what had been the books that had hit me, that like been the most impactful on me, that would have been a different set of books. But now we're talking about integration and application. It's a different ballpark. So, the first one is a book called Being Human by Amy Johnson. It's kind of a coaching book. It's not really a coaching book. It's just more like a collection of essays written by someone who's a coach, and very impactful, very powerful in terms of truth, like pointing you back to the truth of what is. And it's very fundamental in helping you understand that we experience life from the inside out. So what that means is outside in is, I go on holiday, and because I'm on holiday, it makes me feel happy. That's saying that the external thing gives me a feeling. That's outside in. Inside out is understanding that it's my thinking that creates the feeling. So my thinking when I'm on holiday is a lot clearer because I don't have work and other stuff to worry about. I can just live in the moment. And therefore I experience more clarity and peace and happiness. So it's not the fact that I'm on holiday that has created that, it's my thinking whilst I'm on in that place that has created it. That's the inside out, and this book is really great at helping point back to that. Another book that's really impacted me, and I don't know if I'd necessarily pick out one book, but in terms of the teachings in general, is I don't know if you want to call him a spiritual teacher or whatever, but a teacher called Krishnamurti, Indian philosopher teacher type person who was very active between like the things like the 40s and the 80s, or 30s and the 80s, like, but his learnings are very like, again, point you back to the truth of life. So the two books that I've read a couple times are The Awakening of Intelligence and Total Freedom. And then if I was to pick a third one,
I'm curious, what are the applications and integrations from those that you've really adopted?
So from being human, it would be, like I said, the
Mm-hmm.
understanding, the inside out understanding, and she's just really good at using examples that are very digestible.
Mm-hmm.
And she writes in a way that's really easy to understand and reminding you that everything that you experience is through your own thinking. It's nothing like and everything outside of you is entirely neutral. It's only through your thinking that you create a meaning to something. So if an event happens externally to you, you know, I don't know, like you get fired from your job, that's neutral.
Mm-hmm.
It's the thinking that you apply to that creates the experience. So you can make that a bad experience by applying thinking that tells you that this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. Oh my God, I'm never going to find another job. Like, this is going to be a blemish on my, my, I was trying to use the word that you guys use, but I can't remember, but my CV is what we call it.
Yeah.
What do you guys call it?
Resume.
Resume. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. It's on the tip.
But
I knew it came with bar.
yeah, but in Europe, CV is used a lot. So I'm used to
Okay.
both terms.
Okay, sick.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, and then the other side of that would be, okay, I got fired from my job, so what are the opportunities out there? Maybe this is a chance for me to explore a different career. Maybe I can find something that I'm more passionate about. Like, you get to in some way loosely choose the experience that you have based on the thinking that you have, and that book's really good at kind of reminding you of that. And Krishnamurti's work is kind of so that inside out understanding is kind of loosely based on a psychological understanding called the three principles, or the principles. And Krishnamurti's work, to me, I haven't really heard anyone else talk about it like this, because not a lot of people really read his stuff, but it's kind of pre three principles. So his work is very grounded in like spirituality, but also seeing the truth that there is no meaning to anything. We give it the meaning, like, and we only see the world around us through the labels that we apply to things. So like he always uses nature as the example, right? He's like, if you look at a tree, you're not really seeing the tree. You're seeing that tree as a pine tree, a palm tree, a oak tree, a this tree, and your labels and concepts of what the tree is and what it stands for. So therefore, you're not really seeing the tree truly for what it is. So his teachings are very much like looking at beyond your thinking in a way, and that's like, but both of those two things combined are like the most incredible learnings I've ever made about anything, and has completely transformed my life when I've learned to apply them.
I love that. And I see that come back full circle to what we talked about earlier in the lessons you've learned from that season of depression. And you remember the thing that I wanted to say that I forgot, and now it came back to me.
Yes.
It was you said that one of the insights was that everything is temporary and everything will pass. Right? Even the bad stuff and the good stuff, everything will pass. And once you realize that, you don't take it so seriously. And that's what I really heard you say. You didn't use those words, but you're more flexible about. You're not too attached to it, but it's not taking shit too seriously, and then it becomes like it too will pass, and that comes back to what you said today right now. Well, that's the thing that I really saw about that, and what you just said about the inside out instead of outside in, coming back to that vacation example you gave, and those labels, and especially even looking, perceiving a tree. Do we look at it as through our labels and boxes and those lenses and roles, or we just see that tree at the core, coming back to the
Mhm.
question, who am I? Oh, I love that. Great.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you for that. So with that, well, I do want to ask that question on which books have impacted you. So the other question, right? Because I dare to say that you have integrated and applied it in your life, maybe subconsciously or not. So
Yeah,
what are the
100%.
other books that have really, if it's two books that have really impacted you without that focus on the application and integration?
Um, trying to picture my bookshelf. Okay, so there's there's a couple books that come to mind, so I'm going to try and pick two. Um, so I'm gonna cheat again by bunching two books together. So,
All right, no problem.
um, have you read The Alchemist or heard of
Paulo
it?
Coelho? Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yes.
I
Okay.
have it actually, but I haven't read it yet.
So that's a obviously a very famous book because it's a fictional story and there's a very strong sort of spiritual life lesson behind the story, right? And there's two other books that kind of fall into that category. One's called The Celestine Prophecy, which is a story about I think he's a reporter that goes to Peru and he tries to discover these ancient I can't remember what they call them in the book now, but I think they're
Ruins?
principles or learnings or something. And it basically each one is like a life learning basically, and he discovers them like in real time whilst discovering the actual like physical version of it. And then there's another book which is very similar called the Way of the Peaceful Warrior, which is a story of a young guy who gets mentored by like this spiritual dude basically, and he just shows him a different way to experience his life. They're both very good books because they make the learning of self-development and spirituality and being connected to your experience of life very simple to understand in a fun way. And then another one I would say actually it's one that I'm actually on my second read is the Daily Stoic. Like it's
Ah,
just daily, there's like a a parable from a Stoic philosopher at the top, and then an explanation of what that means in kind of modern day terms below. So it's just like 1 page a day, sometimes not even that, sometimes half a page. That's been really good as well. That's kind of understanding of Stoicism and the approach that the people like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and all of these kind of famous philosophers took is like, yeah, really really sick as well.
oh, cool. Thank you. So that first collection, The Alchemist, The Peaceful Warrior, and the Celestine uh,
Prophecy.
Prophecy,
Yeah.
that those three are about simplifying and actually getting mentorship and coaching and learning and having that personal development you said made very simple. And I see you do that in, with, for example, your metaphor with how you look at things in nature and even your
Mm.
own explanation of your own experience. So that's why I bet that you're already applying and integrated, even though you did not have that intense focus of, okay, I'm really going to apply it. You have done it. So, because that's, I believe, when a book really impacts us, we just integrate it
Mhm.
very naturally.
Mhm.
And the Daily Stoic, my younger brother, he has that. And a few years back, I visited him on Aruba. He was living on Aruba at the time, and he had it on the toilet. So every morning he
Yeah.
goes, he eats a page.
Do you know what? I'm gonna start doing that because I forget every day. I not forget every day, but like I have to consciously remember to pick it up and read it. Whereas if you got it next to the toilet,
Yeah.
can't forget that one.
It becomes a nasty book, but hey, you get it
Yeah,
read.
yeah, yeah. Just wash your hands before you pick it up.
Yeah. All right. Cool, Alex. Well, I had a whole lot of fun, so we're gonna wrap this up. I'd like to ask that question. You may have already answered or mentioned it during our conversation, but for people today, tomorrow, 1,000 years from now, what message would you like to share with them?
I guess I don't want to share a message. I want to ask them a question.
Oh, great. I love that. Go ahead.
And that question is what we spoke about earlier. If you stripped away all of your material possessions, all of the labels you have about yourself, all of these ideas and concepts that you have about yourself and the world, what's left behind? Who are you? Like, answer that question for yourself, and yeah, let me know what the answer is.
Beautiful. Who are you
Yeah.
beneath beyond the labels? I love that. Thank you, Alex. This was Story Legacy at Ramiro.me. Alex, with that, we're going to end on a kapow. Are you ready?
Let me adjust my glasses and my headphones and sit upright. I think
All
I'm
right.
ready. Yeah.
You know how now? Kapow!
Kappa!
Awesome. Great. Thank you.